An interesting fact is that at the beginning, when Google first moved into their campus in Mountain View, they had a problem with guys sleeping under their desks, right? Because they had a gym with a shower, and they had a laundry facility, and they had all the amenities that you could want. And so a lot of guys that were coming in from out of state, moving to California, couldn't afford the rents. They would get their job at Google and then just live on campus, and they didn't want people to live on campus, so they made a policy that says you have to go home on Friday afternoon.
Every time I film, you do this. I sit here, I look at the camera, and you jump up on me. I don't know why you do it. What's going on, guys? In this video, we're talking to Nash Foster. He's an ex-Googler and blockchain CEO now. If you want to know which one, you can go on CoinMarketCap and look up Archain. They are number 45 today. But they're not actually Archain, they're Pyrofex. Pyrofex builds the software that the blockchain will run on. And I've mentioned this before, I have a little side biz where I have been hosting meetups for them and then recording them and then posting them, but we've decided to take that in a different direction. And now I do promotional videos which are gonna go on their website, and I'm gonna try and help them build their brand. But I thought it'd be really cool if I could have him on my channel, like exclusively, because him and I see eye to eye on a bunch of things. He thinks failure is a chance to learn. I think failure is a chance to learn. He took a creative approach to finding a job. And I was like, hey, I've done that too. Give me 2 weeks, and you'll see that in the video. And then I'm asking him about, like, how do you run this company? Like, you've worked at all these high-profile places. What makes you run this startup the way that you do? And I can just tell you right now, basically, he just gives you full autonomy. He gives you a project. It's hard, and then you go do it, and then you come back. But he surrounds you with the resources that you need. And I think that's a really cool way of running a company. It's not so, it's not very pyramid, it's more flat at that company, and I think it's really cool. So one thing I do want to mention is that Pyrofex is hiring, and I mean like always hiring. You can go to pyrofex.net and look right now to see what specifically they're looking for, but it'll say like cryptocurrency software engineer. Go ahead and send your resume in. They don't care where you live. You can work remote, you can work locally, you don't have to come into the office. They just want good talent, people that like what they do, like tackling hard projects. The interview process, it can be difficult depending on what you know, but they're pretty much open to anyone applying, and as you'll see in the video, he's open to giving people a chance. Definitely check that out, pyrofex.net. I think it's /careers.html, or just go there and then click on the careers tab at the top. So I really hope that you enjoy this video. I think he has a lot of great insights into things, especially working in big companies. And so I'm not going to do like an outro or anything. So one thing I want to mention is the Discord. We have a great community of people, lots of people joining lately, a lot of good conversations going on, motivation, software related, non-software related, just a good group of people, a little community. The link for that is in the description below. We'd love to have you. I will give you a personal welcome. If I don't, call me out on it. One other thing is that I've started making courses. I posted links on my other videos, give me feedback. I've started making courses, but it's not going to be on Udemy. I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to do it on a Teachable. And my school is going to be called On Focus. So the link for that is in the description below. You're not going to find any courses right now, but those are coming soon. But you can go ahead and enroll to the school. So that'll be cool. If you want to see more videos like this, or you want me to ask Nash any questions or something, be sure and shoot me an email, leave a comment. And if you want to see more videos like this, then go ahead and click that subscribe button, click the little bell so you get notified, and I'll see you in the next one. So this is Nash, and he's the CEO of Pyrofex. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I've been doing internet engineering for about 25 years. I started at University of North Carolina working on the Sunsight project. That was back when Sunsight was the 5th largest website on the internet. Did a lot of work with those guys, beta tested the Java JVM, eventually ended up working at Google, spent some time at George Mason studying math, did a little bit of time at Oracle, some places like that. I've generally spent my time sort of bridging the gap between systems engineering and software engineering.
How old were you when you first wrote your first line of code?
Oh, I wrote my first program on punch cards. My dad ran the computer center at Winthrop University, so I think I was 8 when I wrote my first computer program. It didn't do much. I think it just counted to 10. But yeah, I had to like punch out the cards and then take a box with my cards to the window and give it to the guy, and he ran it through, and I got the output back as like a green bar printout. It was pretty wild. So is university necessary to get into software engineering? I think the answer is no, right? Education is necessary, but you don't have to get it at a university. So in fact, we often use too much university education as a kind of anti-signal, right? So some, it depends on exactly what the matriculation pattern is, but in our hiring process, we don't, we look for people that know a lot of math. We really want people that know a lot of math because what we do here is very mathematical. So if you've gone through and gotten a PhD in math, then you're going to be a very interesting candidate to us. But if you bounce between departments, you've gotten a couple different master's degrees, we're not necessarily all that excited to see that kind of thing, because what we really look for is people who are passionate about computer engineering, passionate about the application of mathematics to computer science, and we recognize that there are a lot of different ways that you can get to that passion, and a lot of different ways that you can service it once you're there, right? So we're as likely to hire a guy who's self-educated, kind of a autodidactic type of person who sits at home and like hacks on Raspberry Pis and compiles his own Linux kernel and wants to run Gentoo instead of Ubuntu, like that kind of stuff, than we are to hire a guy that's got a master's degree or an MBA or something like that.
I'll just segue because you basically just described what you're looking for. So hiring.
Yeah, we're always hiring, right?
Yeah.
So, PyroFX has open positions for developers in a lot of different areas. We are doing a variety of different projects in the blockchain space, in the distributed development tools space. We have development jobs open for guys that are interested in functional programming, so Scala and Haskell experience. We're interested in people that have blockchain experience, people that know Rust, people that know C. A couple of guys that we have working on an integrated development environment right now called CryptoFX, which is going to be targeting blockchain developers. That's mostly written in JavaScript and Lisp, I believe. Like I said before, right, we're looking for sort of the inherent quality that you bring when you show up at work every day, because that makes a bigger difference in our experience than I have this much experience or I have this particular formal education or what have you. We want people who are going to show up, we're going to give them hard problems, they're going to become excited that they have a hard problem to solve and something interesting to work on every day, and then they're going to show up and actually get it done. We have a number of developers overseas. We do a lot of work with the Archain Cooperative, which is all of their software that we write for them is open sourced. And so it's very easy for us to work with international developers. And at this point, we have probably a dozen developers in Europe and Central Asia and Canada, a variety of different locations. So yeah, we're super excited to work with people internationally. About a third of the company at this point is outside the United States.
So it's just pyrofx.com to go and
Pyrofx.net.
Pyrofx.net.
Yeah. Pyrofx.com is a German fireworks company.
Speaking of super cool company, tell me, you told me before, like you try to run the company that you want to work at. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when you start a company, you sort of have to pick, enough that gets you up every morning, right? Like, I'd been doing this for 20 years. I had worked for, a dozen or more companies over the course of that 20 years. So I'd seen a lot of different kinds of executives, and mostly what I want to do here at PyroFX is create an environment where engineers get cool projects to work on. They're given the latitude and the autonomy to work on them in the way that makes the most sense, and then I surround everybody with other people who have the expertise to do great work. And I think that in that kind of an environment, I would have really flourished. So I'm hoping that if I hire people who are like me in that regard, we'll do really well. And so far, it's been paying off like crazy. So, I dropped out of Carolina because the internet boom hit in like the late 90s. After a number of years of putting systems together, I went back to George Mason and just sort of walked on in graduate school and started doing graduate math there.
Like, how does that actually work? Can you just walk into class?
No, I have never matriculated at university. Yeah, I have a lot of hours. I just don't have any degrees. So a lot of schools have a part-time program that they don't advertise very much.
Yeah.
And for many of them, because you're a part-time student, the application process is abbreviated.
Yeah.
The typical deal is that you can, you fill out an application, you give them the standard stuff like your past transcripts or whatever. The first class that I walked into, right, like I sit down, and it's like me and 5 other guys in the class. And the professor turns around and he looks at me and he's like, "Who the hell are you?" And I was like, "I'm just a guy, you know." He starts hassling me. He's like, "Well, to be in this class, you have to have all these different prerequisites." And I said, "Look, I haven't had any of those prerequisites, and the ones that I have had, it's been 10 years. But I tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. You let me sit in your class for 2 weeks, and the day before the drop date, if you don't think I'm hacking it, then I'll drop the class, and I won't even harass you about it. But give me 2 weeks to see if I can't figure out what's going on in here." And by the end of the 2 weeks, he was like, begging me to like get into the master's program and all this other kind of stuff. So
let me get 2 weeks. So that's how I got my first job, like doing software. They told me, yeah, he was like, we really want to hire you, but you have 0 experience. So unfortunately, I was like, let me stop you right there. Hold on.
Well, I think it's, in fact, we had one of our employees, I hired him the same way, right? Like he came in, he didn't do as well in our interviews as we would typically like, and we were disinclined to go forward. And he was like, "Look, give me 2 weeks." And I was like, "All right." Far be it from me to argue with the "give me 2 weeks" claim. Yeah. So, we did. We gave him 2 weeks, and I took a little extra time and I pulled together some projects that could be completed in 2 weeks. Yeah. And he knocked them all out in the first 3 days. And so then I did some more, and he killed it again. And by the time the 2 weeks were over, it was like, this guy's an obvious hire. So I think you should, it's definitely, I think people should definitely look for creative ways to ask for opportunities that are unusual, because the people that won't give them to you, you don't want to work for anyway, right? Because those are the people that are too rigid, too process minded to see the opportunity. If a young kid comes up to you and says, "Give me a couple of weeks to prove myself," most of the guys that most of the people that you want to work for, they're going to take a second to go, "Okay, yeah, show me what you got." Failure is a learning opportunity, yeah. Right? So every time that you're told no, you have the opportunity to gain knowledge you didn't have about, like, why is it that this, was there some, can I think about, is there something that I did that I could have done better? Or, is there something about the other person that makes them say no that I could identify earlier in the process, maybe tailor my approach to whatever, right? But humans are, what is it that Nassim Taleb coined the term anti-fragile, right? We're anti-fragile beings, right? So defeat and failure are typical, but they make us stronger if you let them. Or when you go to the gym, right? Like you go to the gym to tear your muscles up so that they grow back stronger, yeah. Right? And the same thing, it doesn't matter whether it's like going to school or going to the gym or doing job interviews or making videos or music, whatever, right? Whatever your talent, whatever your passion is, you're gonna try something. It's not gonna work. Then you got to try it a bunch more times before it starts to work really well. That's what it was like for me with software, right? Like software made me really mentally tough, because you got to write a lot of programs that don't work before you get one that does, and does something interesting, right? And every single time you sit down to write a program, it's going to fail the first dozen times you run it, right? So, you've got to be prepared to like fail a bunch before you see any level of success. And that leads to a kind of mental toughness that I think is useful in a lot of places in the world. Yeah, so I was doing the graduate school thing, right? I was doing night school. I was working at home during the day. I had a brand new baby. I was going to night school, and Google at that point had started coming out with various different kinds of recruiting to try to increase the number of engineers that they had on staff, and they had put up a billboard somewhere in Silicon Valley, and I'd seen a picture of it on 4chan or something, I don't remember. And it was like a math problem, right? And then you solve the math problem, and then it gives you a URL to go to. I don't know. So I solved the math problem. I knew something was different because in general, like most companies, when they get a HR person or a recruiter on the phone to talk to you, they ask questions like, "What's your spirit animal? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, what's your favorite beverage?" And those questions, I'm like, they don't mean anything to me, right? So, I get this recruiter gets me on the phone, and they're like, "How do you sort of a billion 32-bit integers in the shortest time possible?" And I was like, whoa, like what kind of a company has a recruiter asking questions like that? And then, but because Google has infinite money, once you get past that, they fly you out to one of their locations to do a whole day. So then they make you do like 7 or 8 hours of interviews on site with people. Those interviews they're deeply technical. One of the things I noticed about Google interview is it was designed to interview you for skills that would be relevant in any job that they would have in the engineering department, right? So even though they were interviewing me for a systems engineering job in the SRE department, they asked me questions about graph theory, right? So you have to know enough graph theory to work in their systems engineering department and stuff like that. And it's grueling, it's an entire day. You do, 6 hours of interviewing, and then I think for most of the time that I was there, if one of the 6 people that interviewed you said no, that was enough and you didn't get in. There was a distributed systems interview, and they asked me a question about how to architect a distributed system. Yeah. Anyway, I said, I don't know how this works, right? Like, I've never done this before. But if you want, I'll guess or speculate, I think is what I said. I'll speculate if you'd like. And the interviewer was like, yeah, speculate. And so that's what I did for an hour. What you really want to get out of an interview is a sense for how somebody thinks, right? Especially in the computer engineering field in general and software specifically. Knowing something about how somebody thinks about problems is it's more valuable than having any like specific facts in your head or anything like that, because it tells you what kinds of problems you can give them where they're going to get traction and be able to go find solutions that aren't like ready to hand.
So why did you leave Google?
Well, when I started at Google, it was a very flat engineering organization. I reported to a guy who reported to the VP of all engineering. By the time that I left, there were about 5 levels of management in between me and him.
What I was saying before the camera overheated was that I made a video about how it won't work for Google because you get 14-hour days every day, and they feed you all the meals and they give you free snacks and all.
But they want you to be there because they want to get the productivity out of you.
Did you have that work-life balance when you were there?
Yeah, I mean, so I know exactly what you mean, and that was exactly like sort of my experience at the very end. Was I was working way harder than I really wanted to on something that I was not very passionate about personally, and it was a struggle. So that's a big part of why I eventually left. An interesting fact is that at the beginning, when Google first moved into their campus in Mountain View, they had a problem with guys sleeping under their desks, right? Because they had a gym with a shower, and they had a laundry facility, and they had all the amenities that you could want. And so a lot of guys that were coming in from out of state, moving to California, couldn't afford the rents. They would get their job at Google and then just live on campus, and they didn't want people to live on campus, so they made a policy that says you have to go home on Friday afternoon, right? By the time that they sort of became this big sort of stodgy global company, they had the opposite problem, right? Now, people wanted to work as little as possible, find as many other things to do every day as they could, and Google had to try to figure out how to convince their most productive employees to stick around for extra hours. And so, for example, on the Android project is one of the famous ones, but also on other projects that they do internally. I think it varies a lot from manager to manager, but you get a lot of managers who are just very demanding in an unreasonable way about how much effort you have to put in to be successful. That's not, I don't think, the kind of company that you want to be. I was not willing to tolerate working in an environment where I wasn't having any fun. I felt like I had other options, so I left. People who think they want, or who do want, something different from what they have, but they can't find a way to get out there and get it. And I would just say to most people like that you should just, you have limited time, so you'll seize the day, right?
Thanks for your time.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for letting me interview.
Yeah, you're very welcome.